DSWP Disciple checking in. So, it's Saturday. Did my, my routine, worked at the shop. We had a ton of work to do. I didn't even get through like 2/3 of it, I would say. But we made some headway. Had a little surprise snow, kind of. They said it would be like a dusting, which it kind of was, but it was like enough to make the morning annoying. But anyway, I was in the shop until maybe like 5:15. Then went to the gym for like 40 minutes or so, and then went home and cleaned up and stuff. And now I'm heading back down to Connecticut to go to West Farms Mall, which is like kind of like the nice mall, I guess you could say. It has a Louis Vuitton. Crossing into the Connecticut territory. And then you're gonna have dinner with an old friend. She's from South Africa. I've known her since, probably 2012, maybe a little bit before then. So this is from like the earlier years of, I was on Match, I think, well before then, but this is when I was like in earnest, like, looking for something or whatever. And I think we met up maybe like one time back in the day. And then ever since then, it was just kind of like, she moved all around to like, I think parts of Eastern Mass, deeper into Connecticut. And then I think even like New York, New Jersey for a while. I think back to South Africa. And then she recently has been back kind of like in the area. She's in Central Connecticut and New Britain. So it'll be nice to see her. I haven't seen her in, it's probably been over 10 years at this point. But, we stayed in contact over the years. Strange day. I don't know. The angel of death is upon us. Of course, like Cam said in was it In Too Deep? Like people die every day, B. So Brad Arnold from Three Doors Down, a band I used to like back in the day. I still listen to their song Loser. It's my favorite song of theirs. And I think Kryptonite was like their big hit, but he passed today. We kind of knew it was coming. He was suffering from like stage 4 cancer. I think it had like metastasized like his lung and his brains or something like that. I want to say it started in his kidney, but I'm not sure. But I probably first heard about it maybe like a year ago or so, and he was able to, when I heard about it, it was like stage 4. I was like, damn. I still believe in miracles, but today he passed. Only 47, so my generation, like dead on. It's pretty I guess that's a bad play on words, but my generation, like a year older. Scary stuff, man. And then Terrence Gore, who was kind of like the Robert Horry of baseball, where he played on like 3 teams and won a title with each, and played an important role too as like a base runner and stuff. Like he was like an important role player who just kind of flashed in the playoffs, and had a short career, I think like 8 years or so. He passed. They didn't give the cause, but they said it was from a routine procedure. I don't know if he had like an appendectomy or something like that. So I guess that would be considered kind of routine. And then tragically ended up dying. Only 34, which is like insane. So that's kind of cast a cloud in the celebrity zeitgeist today. Of course, a situation that I still can't talk about it yet because it's still developing in a lot of ways. But somebody very close to me passed a couple weeks ago. At some point down the road, I'll maybe elocute on that. But the others were tertiary, but still had an impact, right? So as you know, I've been like in the fog of my ex from 3 years ago. I still am, but you still gotta kind of move on in a sense as best you can. My heart's not there, but it's like you gotta kind of go through the motions, and hopefully you'll catch lightning in a bottle. So Tuesday coming up, I was supposed to be in St. Louis. I bought my tickets and everything already. My ticket, as it were, not a crazy flight, but I had to cancel it, or at least it's more like a postponement. You get banged for like the $100 cancellation fee, and I'll use it at some point later in the year. But she was in the military, and she's pretty like tough, and I don't know if gruff is the right word, but she's definitely like more like to the point and terse, especially from like a woman's perspective, not very like soft in a sense, which I can deal with it. She's cool. We get along. her friend that she was in the military with passed suddenly from an aneurysm. That's like one of my like worst nightmares, because like I used to suffer from headaches. I mean, I still do. I'm on like a prophylactic that's supposed to like mitigate that, which I don't really use, but because I'm in a gap year with law school, I don't have the same stress. While in a sense having a ton of stress on me, it's not the same as like having to sit down for 2-3 hours and like just grind out case law and try to find the rule and write notes and all that and actually get what they're trying to say and apply it to find the precedent, apply it to like future cases or whatever the conundrum is that the professor presents to you. So I'm not going through that almost like militaristic rigor of studying like a couple hours a day and X amount of hours on the weekend while working 50 hours. I think that was like my undoing. I'll have to cut my hours when I start up again. But yeah, her friend passed suddenly from an aneurysm. Thankfully she had a child, but pretty crazy. And they'd known each other for sounds like 20 years or something like that. She found out maybe like a couple weeks ago, and we're gonna kind of try to soldier through it. But her energy got weird, as understandable if somebody close to you passes. And then I just kind of made the executive decision, all right, I'll call it. And then she was like kind of relieved. She was like, yeah, that's probably a good idea. But she didn't want to cancel on me since we had built up to it for months. I saw her in like late November, so time is on crack. It's already, by the time I get there, it'll be it'll have been almost 3 months since the last time we saw each other. That's the thing about long distance relationships. And I mean, not that we're quite there yet, but the distance, especially with women, if it hits a significant snag, they can just kind of run and hide, and you don't really have any recourse because you don't live right down the road. Ask me how I know, right? You went through it with me. So anyway, I called it because I didn't want it to be like where we were trying to force it and the energy was all weird, and then it ends up being like a negative experience. I suppose I could try to take like the the comforter type angle, which I'm perfectly capable of doing, but only if she's ready for that. So I just called it. She seemed pretty relieved about that, and and cool. Obviously we still talk every day or whatever, and we'll see what happens. We'll see if it becomes an impasse or if it was just kind of a I guess a bump in the road for the temporarily. But I feel for her. Aneurysms, man. You might remember many years ago. Well, if you consider 2015 many, it's starting to feel like antiquity in a lot of ways. But the Ghanaian girl that I was talking to at the time, who I was quite close to, her cousin, I think he was only 27 at the time, he passed from an aneurysm. And in solidarity, I went to the funeral and stuff, and they give you this, it's not kente cloth, but it's something adjacent to it, that you kind of wear around your wrist. I actually felt like I was kind of overdressed in a way, because I had my black suit on and my kind of signature sateen purple handkerchief. But yeah, it was pretty intense. His mother was so distraught. She tried to jump in the casket with him and was wake up, and obviously that's not going to happen, and it was miserable. But I was happy to be there in support. There's in my mind's eye, I don't think there's any greater honor than being there for people when they're bereaved and when they're mourning. I mean, you know how that story ended, but I was still honored. She's married now and quite happy, and actually she's been with her guy for a while, and I think they got married on 2/22/22, so in a couple weeks it'll be 4 years that they've been married. South Africa, no less, is where they got married. So yeah, time flies. That's why I said, a long time ago, it feels like forever going away, but at the same time, I recall it vividly. And I have a moment similar to that coming up, later this month, I suppose. But we'll leave that on the back burner for now. Then the other one, again, Angel of Death. At the risk of sounding too dramatic, I probably won't name this video Angel of Death, but that's kind of what I'm what's on my mind, just in a broader like life scope, whatever. You kind of realize when people around you start passing, you realize like, damn, I feel good. I'm still relatively young at the tender age of 46, but you realize that it's not too far off, right? But the way I think of it as like, obviously everyone wants to live as long as they can, but I'm not like afraid of death in that sense. Obviously I'm religious, so I just kind of have a different steez about it anyway. My thing is like not having children, and not accomplishing what I need to accomplish in my time that I'm here. Like, a life not well lived. So then the other one is my best lady friend, since way back when, call her N. You know her pretty well from my many stories. Her friend who I met almost since the beginning. I've known her for 26 years now. And I remember when I went, back to Eastern Mass, whenever I went back there to visit her when she was like on break, when we were on break from school or whatever in the summer, her friend was there, and she had ALS. Now, not Lou Gehrig's disease, but the other ALS. It's like a leukemia, blood cancer. Apparently she's had it since 2019, and I told her, when she told me like 2 weeks ago that, she came back to visit and she was dying, and I was like, damn, you should have told me. I would have come out to Boston to come see you, because I know it's heavy, so you probably want like a break at night, whatever, but she didn't, which is fine. And apparently she passed like 2 days after we spoke, so that was like January 24th, and then she said she passed on the 26th, 2 days later. Man, that's miserable. And she showed me photos, and she looked so gaunt, because she was like a basketball player, like my friend, back in high school, and I think college as well. So she was like, around 6 feet tall. Again, thankfully, she had 3 children. In a beautiful stroke of whatever. So she was with the same guy since high school, and he was younger too. I think he was like a sophomore, and she was like a junior, senior when they met. But they were never married. They had 3 kids together. They were together, like married, basically, but just not married on paper. And apparently she was the one that didn't want to get married. Like, she just, I guess, didn't believe in it or whatever. You're starting to see women pop up like that. I have a few friends that are like that, though I can remember when we were younger, when they wanted it, but now they're just kind of like, I don't know if that's just like cope, like the guys that they're with don't want to get married or whatever, but in this case, he wanted to get married and she just didn't care to. She's like, I'm not going anywhere, like, we're together, da-da-da-da. And, as she was, dying, that's how my friend put it. That's what it turned out to be. Even as, I'm an eternal optimist, so I'm like, I'm going to be praying for her. I believe in miracles. I guess it had something to do with her lungs, like, failing, and they couldn't find a compatible, like, person for a lung transplant or whatever, so it was just like a fait accompli. And she sent me the photos over, and she was just so, like, gaunt, and, like, you could tell weathered, and you could tell she had, like, lost her hair, and it had, like a wig on, and she was always, like, natural and stuff, and I was like, oh, man, my God. Again, she was a very stout woman, not fat, just like built and like 6 feet tall. And, I'd known her, not my best friend or anything like that, but I knew her, like, we were friendly and stuff. Whenever I was around and came back to visit her folks back in Eastern Mass, we'd all kind of get together and grab a bite or whatever. Actually, I think I have a really nice photo of all of us now that I stop and think about it. I gotta go back and search for it. But, yeah, when I stop at the mall, because I'm going to like the mall for a reason and no reason at all. I was going to stop at Abercrombie. I'm hoping they have a sale on this top and then these cargo pants that I really want, but I just don't want to pay full price. I've been watching it since like October or November. So anyway, yeah, they got married in the hospital, like basically a few days before she passed. I guess her husband wanted it, and then she finally wanted it as she knew that, her time had come, basically. And, she sent me photos of her, and I was like, man, this is so miserable. And it's scary because, like, we don't really know the cause of these things. It just kind of happens. And from what I understand, she was actually, so my friend Ann, she's just under 2 years younger than me. So, like, in other words, like, I met her when I was a junior and she was a freshman in college. And her friend, they were in the same grade, but I think she might have stayed back or something. So she's really she was about to be 46. So in other words, I'm like less than a year older than she is. Which I didn't know. I just assumed that they were, that they were the same age. But yeah, so she's, off with the ancestors. So it's that time, man. I just hope that's, I think that's all my heart can take for now as far as like loss. And even though one was a very personal loss, right? But, at least he had made it to like I wouldn't say ripe old age, but like a kind of like an old enough age in the grand scheme of things. But these others, like, two younger women, like in their early mid 40s. And then, celebrity news, I didn't know them, but like, I'm a guy, I guess I'm like one of the last two people that loves like professional sports and Hollywood and stuff like that. So like, I feel it like when somebody prominent passes, especially one of them was like, Brad Arnold is someone that I listen to, like I said, Three Doors Down, not like my favorite band, but they have a couple songs that I really enjoy. So, and I was actually figuratively like, pouring out a little liquor for him today, and in the lab listening to Loser, and you can see all the comments in YouTube, people like, oh, R.I.P. and glad he found God and everything like that. And I guess he was really religious. They're from Mississippi, that's on brand, in the Bible Belt and everything. And I guess he was like a very, very much like born again Christian and all that. So, good for him in that sense. But yeah, man. These things, I think it's weird because like I haven't really accomplished anything in life per se. I'm not like a guy that like anyone has a reason to be like jealous of or anything like that or whatever. But like I'm at that point where I'm thinking about like legacy and like what have I accomplished, what do I hope to accomplish and all that, and like. Obviously there's no point in worrying about things like these in a lot of ways because like to this day, I mean, there are some things that we know are carcinogenic and cause cancer, but a lot of it's just kind of mysterious, like no family history, things like that. Technically I have a family history with my uncle, but like he was a smoker. Everyone else in my family lives to a ripe old age, thankfully, but oh wow, no wonder everybody just kind of slowed down. This guy is facing the wrong way. Looks like he was lucky and didn't hit anything. He just kind of spun out, probably on black ice. It is 8 degrees right now, so yeah, there's probably some black ice that he spun out on. That looks like a Lexus IS or something, so he's probably rear wheel drive. Lucky for him, looks like he didn't even hit the guardrail or anything. That's why we, in these blue states, we have like these like rumble strips. I mean, in fairness, I think they're in other states too, but I think like legally they're everywhere here, like in Massachusetts, New England, California, whatever. I think there are some states because I road trip a good deal, and I feel like I've come to some or I've driven on certain highways in certain red states where they didn't have those, and they save lives, man. They really do. But I guess all is well that ends well. He's lucky that there was no real traffic coming his way, and he's able to kind of spin out and do what he did and like live to talk about it. But yeah, you can, if you're familiar with the skyline, I'm in Hartford now. I got a little further to go to get to Farmington, which is West Farms Mall. I'll be down here again for my uncle's 75th birthday. It was supposed to be like last weekend, but he canceled because of the weather, so I'm sure that's coming up, and I'm sure it's going to be on one of these like inconvenient Sundays. I always have things filling in on Sundays when I just want to sleep in. I have my other cousin's 50th birthday coming up next weekend, which has turned into a proper like mess in my family because nobody can get along. And as of now, my mom and aunt, if you can believe, his mom and his aunt, also my mom and my aunt, they're saying they're not going, mainly because of the wives, and they feel a certain way. They take a certain umbrage because, more or less his wife's family kind of like stake claim to him, more or less, these last, wow, they've been married since July of 2011, so like almost 15 years. So that's turning into like a proper disaster. I'm going to try to drag him there. And then my cousin who's covering it, like his brother, is covering most of it. But he's like low-key, like, yeah, if you bring them... Mind you, this is his mom and his aunt, too. If you bring them, like, you're covering their portion. Because, like, this whole thing is digging in my pockets. And low-key sit between them and the wives so it doesn't turn into something. And you're probably wondering, like, damn, were you raised by wolves? Like, what's going on there, man? I have so many stories, including involving my dear late grandmother in this nonsense situation. But that's for another time. I've already talked too much. I've got like another 15, 20 minutes to drive. Enjoy a podcast. But as I always say, cherish the day, because you just don't know. The Lord is faithful. Stay with me. God bless.